Abanyansa Fusu Munibia one can asam. Say Mafu to some Kakre was supreme. Yo, Kofi, oh my, a woman, oh many, a mamma, Yenny baby, what are warring? One song, one in pa, as I did power of you. Demo Embera, Abeya, if you had oh my, a woman, oh my, a mamma. Shira, Mama Nipaya, the Foa, and Yanum. And Fanya Misroya, Jumana, Yami Besrayan, O'Brien, Boya, and Moya Murai, Abeya, Efri, and Ara, Mama Beya, Efri, and Ara, Janoma Pofo, I sit Beya, Efri, and Ara, Mama Beya, Efri, and
Wherever you are, you're live at Z 101.9 FM, your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio. You're welcome to The Focus, your favorite, most educative and authoritative current affairs show on radio. You can also listen to us on IG at ZFMGH, or you can also listen to us on Facebook, ZFMGH, or on X, also on ZFMGH. If you're on TikTok or YouTube, you can follow us or listen to us on Z Multimedia. On TikTok or YouTube, you can listen to us or follow us on Z Multimedia. Or you can listen to us also on www.zmultimedia.com. www.zmultimedia.com. My name is Kweku Atakra Jumo, and I'm your host for The Focus. We'll take a very short break here. When we return, we'll take news from around the world. Yami Shira, Mama Nipaya, the Foa, and Yanum. And Fanya Misroya, Jumana, Yami Besrayan.
Leisure and Business Radio.
Hello, too. Patrick, Yawa, Bibi Rafu, Naviri Yami. No money, the Rafa from my Nivea. No Jamaica and Sia, no Demi for Continental. Oh, did it. And I was so so my bomba me so body me. Every say one me never. Papa no for man titi me re. What do me from? I want my time for him. But you know for me see me go I am a muso. And you can't know you. And the baby Maxi. Make one lady na matina ya with your wife. Now what you have been going round in me all down. And one baby where round the FM. Never did me all down. Only many dance for my aging where some bro. Never did me all down. Oh my
Radio. I want to me when they ready so am I one many dance for my You're tuned in to Z 101.9 FM, your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio. You're tuned in to Z 101.9 FM, your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
So if you're just joining us, you're still live at Z101.9 FM, and this is The Focus, your most educative, authoritative, and the best current affairs show on radio. Please do not forget to follow us on our IG media handles, that's ZFMGH, on Facebook, ZFMGH, or on X, ZFMGH. Also, you can send to us your comments, your suggestions, your contributions to the discussion on our WhatsApp line 0544 321 019. 0544 321 019.
One 101.9 FM, your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
So for our very first segment, we'll take news from around the world. And this past week in Ghana, President John Mahama, during the State of Nations Address 2025, has justified his decision to reduce the number of ministers and deputy ministers to 60, citing cost reduction, improved efficiency, and the need to set an example for future administrations. Delivering his first State of Nations address on Thursday, February 27, 2025, he urged successive governments to build on this reform. Also at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, this week, the suspect in the alleged murder of a final year student of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, popularly known as KNUST, has been remanded in prison custody for 2 weeks. Joanna Yabani was found unresponsive behind the central laboratory of the university campus in the early hours of Thursday. Police later arrested Daniel Tufo as suspect following crime scene investigation. Also on Ethiopia and Somalia talks, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was welcomed in the Somali capital Mogadishu on Thursday by President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud for talks aimed at reaffirming their ties. Tensions between the neighboring countries mounted last year after landlocked Ethiopia struck a deal to lease a stretch of coastline from Somalia's breakaway region of Somaliland. Still around Africa, the BBC is seeking a rising star of African journalism for the BBC News Komla Dumont Award, which is now in its 10th year. Journalists from across Africa are invited to apply for the award, which aims to uncover and promote fresh talent from the continent. The winner will spend 3 months at the BBC headquarters in London, gaining skills and experience. Applications close on 20th March 2025 at 23:59 GMT. And on the international scene, Annelies Dodds, the UK's International Development Minister, resigned after Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government announced significant cuts to the foreign aid budget. Dodds criticized the decision, arguing it would undermine the UK's role in global humanitarian efforts and damage its diplomatic credibility. The reduction in aid funding has sparked backlash from NGOs and opposition politicians who claim it contradicts the UK's commitment to international development, particularly in regions suffering from poverty and conflict. Starmer's administration defended the move, citing economic constraints and the need to prioritize domestic spending. Also, following the private meeting between Presidents Trump and Zelensky, they held a joint press conference that quickly became contentious. Trump openly criticized Zelensky for not showing sufficient appreciation for American support, while Zelensky defended Ukraine's position and sovereignty. The leaders also debated on economic agreements concerning Ukraine's mineral and energy resources, with Trump pushing for U.S. involvement in extraction projects. The public dispute highlighted the growing tensions and different perspectives on the ongoing conflict and bilateral cooperation.
Zed 101.9 FM.
Also, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was due to hold consultations with security chiefs and ministers on Friday after an Israeli delegation returned from Cairo with no agreement on extending the Gaza ceasefire, two Israeli officials said. Egyptian and Qatari mediators asked for some time over the next few days to resolve the crisis over the ceasefire, which is due to expire on Saturday, the officials again said. News also on the avalanche in the Indian Himalayas reveal that at least 41 people are trapped after being swept away by an avalanche in the Indian Himalayas, according to local officials. The incident took place near a highway in the state of Uttarakhnd's Chamoli's region, where workers were engaged in road construction. Local police said at least 57 workers were initially buried under snow. Of those, 16 have been rescued so far, senior police officers have said. 5 of them are in a serious condition and have been taken to a military facility for treatment. So we'll take a very short break here. When we come back, we'll delve into the main matter for today. Stay tuned.
Radio. You're tuned in to Z 101.9 FM, your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio. Z 101.9 FM. Z 101.9 FM.
I'm a bonsoy, won't come on, I'm meant to mendo.
Z 101.9 FM.
Thank you very much for staying with us. We're still live on Z 101.9 FM, and as the Focus, the most educative and authoritative current affairs show on radio. I guess we're all aware of the fact that on Thursday, the President of the nation, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, gave the State of Nations address. I'm pretty sure we all have our sentiments. We've debated it thoroughly. But today in the studio, I have some experts who are going to discuss with us to tell us from their experts' perspective what the State of Nations address means to us. And more particularly, we'll be focusing on 4 main areas: the food import aspect, the unemployment rate, the educational aspect, and unemployment in Ghana. To help me do this discussion, I have in the studio Professor Adey. Professor Adey is a renowned economist. He's also a leadership expert, an entrepreneur, a former public servant, or I guess he's still a public servant at heart, and somebody who has been in Ghana, who has seen Ghana through it all. Professor, you're welcome to our discussion today.
Thank you very much.
And also with us, we have Nana Osafo Kantanka, who is a development communications specialist and an expert in media affairs. Nana, you're welcome to our show today.
Well, thanks. Good morning.
Right, so we'll just go straight to it. And even before we look at it, I mean, what were your expectations before President gave a State of Nations address? What were your expectations? What did you expect to hear him say? Even before we look at what he said. And I'll start with Prof.
Let me be honest, I had no expectation. I was involved in so many things that I didn't. But of course, being a sonner, I was expecting that he would talk about what he thinks the economy and the state of the country is today. As usual, I was expecting him to throw punches at the opposition, and then outline what he wants to do, especially in relation to his manifesto. So in that sense, I wasn't expecting any surprising outcome other than this, but that I really considered that I'm expecting the president to say this and this. To be honest, I did not give any consideration to it.
Right, Nana?
Well, thanks, and good morning to you, Prof, as well. I think that generally the State of the Nation's address is supposed to be a constitutional requirement. And just a couple of months back, we're all very much aware that the former president, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, was in the Parliament House, to present a similar, arrangement, which was also required of him. And so, first of all, as a constitutional requirement, I think that it was in place. In terms of expectations, I'm not too sure whether I will differ so much from what the good Prof has already indicated. We all know the state of the nation as of now, and many have said that this was quite reflective of the results of the last, general elections in the country, which to quite an extent would paint the picture of not very good or prospective hope for the people in many of the areas that we're going to look at, and I think that we'll take that much later on. And so, to quite an extent, I wasn't expecting so much of anything that would all of a sudden turn things around. But at the same time, because of the situation that Ghanaians were faced with in December, which actually reflected in the last elections, I think that Ghanaians may have expected that we would hear certain things that would bring some hope, at the least, to their minds and to the future, because this is the leadership, this is the president who has been in office, of course, just for a couple of months anyway. But we expect that once he addresses the nation, he's going to tell us probably the present state, which we all know is not very, very positive, but at least to give us some hope that in the next 4 years that he would have the mandate, to rule our nation as the president and as the leader of the nation. Something good, at least, would happen to us.
Right, but let me find out from you, Nana. Do you think from the State of Nations address given by the president, do you think he actually told us the true picture of Ghana?
Well, why not? I mean, he looked at several, sectors of the economy.
Now, I'm asking this because, the minorities of a view that the president, in fact, I think I've seen a report saying his State of Nations address was just a populist conversation.
Actually, the term they use, lamentations.
Lamentations, yes.
But lawyer, would we have expected anything different from the opposition. I mean, this has been the culture that Ghanaians have been fed with over the years. I mean, I can say it without any fear of favor that right from the 1992, when 1992 were ushered into the constitutional era, of course, in the very first 4-year tenure, we didn't have opposition in parliament, and so it was, an all NDC thing. But behind the scenes, the opposition were not happy about what was happening or what was going on, and consistently, 4-year tenure after the other, we have always seen the opposition say that it's not been any good at all. And if you recall, just before the last elections, anytime the president was in the chamber to deliver either the State of the Nation's address or the finance minister delivering the budget, I mean, the gentleman on the other side of the aisle will always complain and say that this presents no hope. But I think that to quite an extent, what the current situation is was presented to us. As to whether we were giving direct pointers of hope which would inure to the kind of things that Ghanaians are expecting, I think that's part of what we'll be subjecting ourselves to this morning, and I think when we get to the break,
maybe
we'll
let
cross
me add that interestingly, the opposition did not say his description of the state of the nation was wrong, and that's what I was expecting. But they said that we are fed up with lamentations. What are you going to do?
To fix the economy.
And I think that in that sense, there's a consensus as to the fact that his description of the state of the nation. Let me say generally also that to some extent, and I can only say this because I'm older than the president, though he's my president. So, Your Excellency John, don't kill me when you meet me. I think that he has matured compared to his first term, and we hope that he will sustain it. And yes, you expect that there will always be punches here and there, but I think that we have come a bit a long way, and I'm expecting.
But even for him, looking at his experience coming in, the first president who was taken out of office, he has to go into opposition.
The first president ever.
Exactly. Has to go into opposition for 8 years, now come back. You have no option than to mature. Or he will, and well, people also say he's the only experienced president we have. At least he has served, gone out for 8 years, looked at what was wrong, has come back now with experience, like somebody taking a reset.
The only trouble is that while there's evidence of the president having matured, the NDC rank and file, the way they behaved after the elections, and some of them, still the way they talk, the deputy operations director and the president office and that thing, doesn't show that maturity of the president has translated.
But I think those acts have been condemned severally, especially of the acts of violence. And I'm even aware the party itself has condemned most of those acts of the officers.
So what I'm saying is that it shows that the party has not matured, and therefore the president and the leadership have a bigger task to make sure that their efforts are not negatively counteracted by the rank and file.
Well, thank you very much, Prof. Let's go directly into the State of Nation address. And I want to start with unemployment. Well, the president has told us that there are about 2 million people who are currently unemployed in Ghana and all that. He has told us that he's going to solve unemployment. But the data also will show, it looks like almost every president, usually for their first State of Nations address, the issue of unemployment is always part of their SONA. They tell us they'll solve it. The leave office is still the same situation. What do you make of this, Prof?
First of all, we must be very careful about the statistics. I don't trust the statistics.
Right.
As an economist, I know that there are various levels of unemployment, and you don't define it. There are open unemployment. That's just somebody having no job at all, going around looking. There's a high level of underemployment. In other words, people who can do, if they had opportunity, do thrice, 4 times what they could do. And therefore, I think that the state of unemployment may be worse than the 2 million. And I think it is.
But probably underemployment, what do you mean?
Underemployment means that, for example, if someone is selling some wache in the morning and sells it in 1 hour, and the rest of the day, practically he does nothing, he's underemployed. He could do, if there was opportunity, he could be selling all throughout the day.
But Prof, this is the person's decision. Because now a lot of people now talk about work-life balance.
It's not. We are talking about, I'm using a specific economic term.
Right.
And there's a difference between open unemployment, that's somebody who has finished school sitting down there looking for a job, and people who are doing some little things because they don't have the opportunity or the means. Of course, those who decide not to work, they are not counted as among the unemployed.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. The second thing, and it's very, it goes with the politicians. They are talking about 10 billion to do this and that and that. At the end of the day, we are not going to solve our unemployment problem unless the whole economy is revived. For example, if today interest rates were about 15%, you will generate more than 2 million employment.
Right.
And so we must not, and they were emphasizing what we are going to do and other things, but the main solution to our unemployment situation is the right economic policies that will generate a lot of SMEs, and the SMEs are not what the government through their own support does. It's just limited. But the average farmer doubling his farm and therefore requires 4 employees, laborers, that immediately translates into millions of jobs. The average. So I think that.
But if I'm to get you clear, are you saying that the policies are aligned by government? We can look at some of them, Kukon, Kisikiti and all that.
Yeah.
Are you saying that they are not enough to create employment in the economy?
They are what I call the political solutions. They are very, by themselves, have limited impact and mark it on the wall. At the end of the day, when you come and say that you have employed 50,000 people, what is that to the whole economy? When every farmer having 1 laborer immediately translates into millions. So I'm not saying that, and that should be done. Politicians, if they don't do it, they won't get power. But behind, they must know that ultimately the unemployment situation depends upon getting the economic in shape, cost of capital, that's borrowing being low, stabilizing the foreign exchange. And you will be surprised that the government cannot say that this is my job created or this my program did this. But most Ghanaians will get job.
Nana?
Well, when we talk about the subject of unemployment, it's one particular subject that touches me so hard. And why would I say this? Probably before I get on to what I'd like to say, just taking a cue from what Prof indicated earlier. I mean, the unemployment situation has always had some, debate around it. And like Prof said, whether the statistics are right or not. Again, who am I to be debating the good old economics professor, who says that he doesn't trust the statistics. But I mean, my position is that he may be very well right, but this is the kind of data, this is the kind of statistics that we have. It may not, and sometimes depending on who is churning out, the statistics, you would find some difference here and there. But also just to add to that, I mean, the situation of the underemployment, I mean, sometimes you would find very qualified people, but because of the unavailability of the right kind of jobs that they are qualified and capable of rendering, you would find them doing something else.
Let me give you an example here.
Yes.
For example, there are several thousands of doctors and nurses who at the moment they are doing this, helping homes here and there, and some of the doctors, they may get a locum once a week because they have no job.
Absolutely.
So these are the
Absolutely. So there you are. So you would find, some of these very capable hands, because they do not, or the right jobs for which they've been trained and could actually perform and contribute to the productivity of the nation. Because there are no jobs, they find themselves doing other things. And so when you look at the whole statistic, you would realize that there are bits and pieces of situations or scenarios, that could be altered here and there. But coming back to the situation of the unemployment, I mean, according to the current statistics, we're told that the latest data, which was around 2023, was pointing to about 14.7%. Again, that's why, I mean, Prof would say whether this is true or not. I mean, you can look at them again. But if you have the productive force, about 14.7 of that, out of employment, out of what they are capable of doing, I think that any economy, any state should be very much worried about that. And so one would expect that the government, the leadership, and in this case, when His Excellency the President addresses the nation and talks about the current situation and why he has, I'm not too sure whether this is the first time, but this is quite unique, set up, a new ministry for youth development and empowerment. We have had some youth ministries in the past. I mean, sometimes they have been, paired up with sports. In other times, I think they have been paired up with other, sectors and all that. But this time around, it is a direct, permit me to say, deliberate setting up of a particular ministry for youth development and empowerment. I would say that that is quite a bold step, from the vision that the president would carry along and would want to bring into, the productive sector of the economy. Now, what is the policy drive of this ministry that has been set up? First of all, like Prof said, I mean, we have many trained Ghanaians. Prof talked about the health professionals and all that. I mean, and interestingly, I'm sure we're all aware of the letters, the directive from the Office of the President or the Office of the Chief of Staff, talking about, relieving some health professionals and other education professionals who had been relieved of their contracts, probably because of the timing of the signature of their employment and stuff like that.
In fact, I was going to ask that, then isn't it counterproductive? Because
well,
we're talking about unemployment. Some people have gained employment and they're being asked to go home because they were employed at a time which was tagged as a wrong time. Yeah.
Well, that's why I describe it as quite interesting. Yeah. But that being said, I'm saying that if you have a dedicated ministry, for youth development and empowerment, there must be a certain powerful philosophy paradigm that should be behind, the setting up of this ministry. And I would expect that the policies that would drive this particular ministry would, sooner than later be made public to the Ghanaian people. So we will know what kind of structures and systems are going to be put in place, what kind of policy, objectives are going to be put in place such that, the kind of, and we are talking about youth here, and you're talking about 14.7% not having jobs. So we would want to see a certain deliberate, policy that would drive this whole, vision and to give the kind of confidence that Ghanaians would expect. I mean, what kind of training are we looking at? And one other thing that I'd like to talk about probably before you take the opportunity away from me is the Ghanaian mentality too, the attitude towards work. We're talking about productivity here. We're talking about contributing to the national development agenda. But how many people have been psyched up post their training and are willing to look up to serving their country so consciously in such a way that you are not going to have wastages, you're not going to have people, some kind of employment opportunities created for them. And instead of starting work at 8 o'clock, going for the usual 1 hour break between 12 and 1 and then closing at 5. Well, now we also have the 24-hour economy thing, which is going to, promote the 3-shift systems and all that. But the point I'm trying to make here is this, that the policies that are going to be laid down to support this new Ministry of Youth Development and Empowerment should be looking at the attitudes of the people that we are going to get into the world of work, such that we are looking at a national goal rather than, the personal thing that we have had. We all know in the public sector, in the civil sector, and in fact, in most, Ghanaian workplaces, work starts at 8, but you would hardly find any persons at work at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You would hardly find that. Break is supposed to be just about an hour, I think between 12 and 1 p.m. or 12:30 and 1:30 p.m. or whatever it is. But you would find people out of their offices even before break. And they would be returning, hours after break is expected to be over. And when the working...
But isn't that just a problem of leadership?
Well, you can put that to leadership, but I think that the Ghanaian himself, herself, should also begin the self-assessment and beginning to realize that we cannot create, all the mountains out of nothing.
But
we need, to contribute to ourselves.
He just hit the... I always maintain that leadership is cause, everything else is effect.
Yes.
When His Excellency Atta Mills came, almost every public servant was going to work on time. Why? Because he would be there on time. At the meeting, he will be on the start. So leadership here, I think that the president, the ministers can set the tone. And believe me, when you set the tone, very soon people fall in line. But back to the issue of the unemployment. When I was talking about the statistics, I'm actually not disagreeing with what is in the public domain, but I'm saying that it is worse. What I'm saying, that it is worse than the statistics of 14.3% or 2 million. Number two, let me be a bit cynical here, because when we have lived it through, was born in 1948. So therefore, I have seen everything else. I marched in school at the time of independence and everything else to date. I'm a bit cynical when it comes to creating government agencies. And therefore, this new ministry doesn't give me much hope. Whether we have seen Maslog, Youth Employment, YEP, whatever, and all of them. Most of them eventually becomes a sinkhole and feeds the vampire of political corruption. I believe that once you put in certain macro and meso, I will explain what it means, policies, the employment becomes almost a byproduct, even though there may be certain interventions. What I mean by macro is when the economic general atmosphere, the inflation is down, the cost of capital and everything. The meso is specific agriculture sector-wide policies. And if you, sometimes these ministries and programs are just distractions and they feed the political vampires. And that is where, so that's the first thing I want to say. But even having said that, I think that what I take from there is his apprenticeship program. I think that because, again, if you are getting people to learn skills and people know that while they are doing it, they will get some sort of stipend. When they finish, they may get some tools and some startup capital. So there are certain things in their program which I think, when pursued, will be very good. I think that there are models also in other countries, like Germany. In Germany, quite interestingly, they don't have technical schools and then grammar schools. Everybody goes to the school because you need certain literacy, numeracy, scientific to grade 10. At 10, they sit examination like the O level, and then those who are going to pursue to the university, typical one, continue, but everyone has 2 more years, you must be learning some trade. And we may be looking at that one. This type of general policies ensure sustainable ones rather than specific interventions, which at the end of John's 4 years, another one comes. Even if it is the same party, it may be a different program. And we must look for sustainable interventions rather than creating ministries and agencies.
Well, Prof, I'm sorry, lawyer. I'm just, without necessarily challenging the position that you just put across, you talked about some of the specific interventions like the MASLOC, the NAPCOs and all that. I would have thought that the ministry would probably be laying out the strategic policy direction that would be driving this whole and the things that you've talked about, the agric interventions and all that. But you need, and that's why I find it quite positive, because now you're narrowing down to a ministry which is not associated with any other sector like sports and other things.
Yeah,
but
those
this is
things could have
specifically...
those things could have been done by the National Development Planning Commission, which when they come, they talk about it, but they set it aside. In other words, there's a need for a national framework, but creating the ministry here and there, which will last for 3 years and that things will not be the solution.
Again,
and
Prof,
we must go and support the core national institutions.
Again, Prof, I don't think I disagree with that. You're absolutely right. But what I'm saying here is this, that when you have a certain deliberate policy by a ministry, says youth development and empowerment, and we're looking at the subject of unemployment here, I think, in addition to all the things you have said, and the NDPC is, this very, very laudable constitutional body that we should all be looking up to, because at the end of the day, the whole governance structure is supposed to be looking at how, all the various sectors that are put in place are well coordinated, for national development and all that. So, yes, I agree with you. We have seen, ministries being created here and there. What I am saying of the positivity of this particular one is that I think that one, it is good, it is positive, but much more importantly, let's see what the policies and structures and systems that are going to be put in place. At the end of the day, let us have the Ghanaians' state of mind towards contributing his or her quota to national development. We'll talk about the military training, for example, for national service, which is a disciplinary measure. And I love it so much, that every Ghanaian student after university, after the tertiary,
criticized heavily. A lot of people think that is really an unnecessary.
Well, why not? That's their opinion, but why not? We all know that the kind of disciplinary measures that you would find in the military. So I love it. I wish that I was going back, to my school days and probably have a second chance at that, just to form my mind. I think that the state of the mind of the Ghanaian, and for that matter, the Ghanaian worker, is so critical necessary. And outlawed, the position that's been taken by the president. Yeah.
Right, but let me ask you, should the government be at the forefront of the resolve to fight unemployment? Shouldn't government just put in the necessary policies to allow private people to thrive? And I'm coming back on, Prof, what you hinted.
The answer is yes and no. The government is responsible, as you said, for the policy framework that will catalyze employment. But the government doesn't have to be, and we have found that the government direct interventions don't work in this country. So the government doesn't have to be the direct employer of people, but the government has a mandate and a responsibility, and also the power. The power is not here military power, but the power of policy, the power of directive to make a difference. Power. So yes, that's why I am very much opposed to the MASLOC, what they had it for NAPCO and that things. Eventually, it is politicized. They don't achieve, it's a loss to the nation. But let the government put the policy framework as its responsibilities and support private sector agencies. In fact, they don't have to even give them money. As soon as, mark it on the wall. If today the government says it's not going to borrow at treasury bill rates beyond 15%, which people will kick for 2 weeks, but they will go. Because where are you going to put the money? And interest rates come down, you will be surprised that the catalytic role at this moment, sitting here, my not-for-profit organization is ready to have 4 secondary schools established. We have gotten land in Tamale, we are getting one in Takoradi, one in Techiman, and we are looking for one in Ho. Why? Because, and if we can borrow at a lower rate, these things will be there, and you will be employing at least 600 people. And imagine you multiply that one by their thousands.
Yeah.
You go to the factories, the manufacturers, the agri sector, and the rest. So, yes, the government has the policy and directive, and also using its own purchasing power. You know, the government is the single biggest spender, and directing its expenditure. For example, if the government says that it is not going to buy in the schools any imported rice, there will be rice in Ghana produced within a year. One day, so then they are catalyzing employment without necessarily being the direct agents, because when they become direct agents, we have the confirmed flying to Burkina Faso and other things. And it is, I'm using confirm not against NDC in both sides.
Right. But curiously, I find in Esona that this time around, the president acknowledges the Okada business. I mean, I think we'll recall that in 2016, I stand to be corrected, as part of their campaign, they wanted to put a ban on Okada. There was a huge backlash on them. Now, curiously, I find as part of creating employment, they're saying that they're going to regularize it and now train the Okada riders. For us as Ghanaians, what do we think of it? I mean, some people have seen Okada as a huge menace on the road. Now, if you want to take a turn, aside looking out for the passenger in the car, you must check the Okada. Sometimes they will tell you we are not allowing. You see, ping, 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 ping. You know that thing. So, what do we think? Do you think it's the right move, especially for creating employment?
Well, I think whether we like it or not, Okada has come to stay. And politically, none of the parties will be able to eliminate it. I think that the issue has to do with regulating them. And that will not be political. Of course, the licensing and other things. It's giving the authority to the police, which they have anyway, but because of, unfortunately, bribery and corruption, they don't infect it. But it's a matter of the discipline Nana was talking about, regularizing it. But let me tell you, Okada is not going to add much to employment. They are already there in their thousands. And if you are going to look at Okada as a means of employment, more people forget it.
Oh, no, but it's actually a very huge industry.
Yes, they
but
are
just
there.
that the reason why they are stifled is that they are always arrested. They are, if you go to Nima police station, for the last time I was there, a lot of bikes being pounded.
Yes, I agree. That's why things must be done to regularize it, make them safer. But the incremental jobs will not be that much. That's what I'm saying.
Well, again, Okada, and very quickly to add up to what you had indicated earlier, lawyer, I think that rather, I'm not too sure whether that was 2016, but I am very, very sure that in 2020 and again in 2024 it was repeated. I think His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama had indicated that if he won power, the Okada, for want of a better description, sector or industry is one that he would seek to regulate and regularize. And so I think that whatever must have been said in Sona probably is a confirmation of one of the things. I'm not too sure about the 2016 picture that you painted, but I know very well that in 2020 and in 2024, it was one of the policy directions that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama may have pointed to. But coming back to the subject of Okada, and I agree with you when you describe it as a menace, on our roads. I have always lamented this business. And I also agree with you that it is quite a huge industry, which if when properly regulated, properly curated, the riders very well trained and all that, the licensing regime and all that. But that's quite a tall order. I agree with Prof when he talks about the incremental, percentages or the impact that it has on the overall employment of the state and all that. But I think that, like you also said, it has come to stay, and it's quite big, and it is doing so well in other communities and sectors. But for me, the fundamental thing again is that policy document that will seek to do the regulation or regularization bit, because we all know that even when you talk about drivers, commercial drivers themselves, how many of them are well trained? How many of them receive their licensing through the right, courtesies and all that? Yeah. How many of them are well checked, on the roads and making sure that our commercial drivers, are doing what is required and expected of them? Not to now talk about the Okada guys. You talked about Nima Police Station. I point to the Rage Hospital. I had this friend, medical officer, who would tell me that it is quite a sad spectacle. Yes. When you go to the hospitals. Yes. It's like the abattoir. They just, they just bring them in, and it's like chopping, their limbs off left and right. Why? I think that fundamentally the education, the regulation, the licensing, the continuous training, in fact, the safety equipment, and this is something that if we look at, I think it is quite necessary in terms of the numbers that it would bring on to, the job creation or the employment situation. I'm not too sure. I haven't done that kind of statistic yet, but I think that it is an area that, when looked at critically, the way it is operating now is so dangerous. If you are driving, you are not sure where the next Okada is coming from, whether from your left or from your right. And they do it anyhow. Once they come ahead of you, they're standing right in front of you, and you need to be so alert to be able to manage them. Yeah. I think it is a positive area, but we need to be critical about how the policy that will lead to its regulation and regularization.
Okay, thank you very much. And if you're just joining us, we're still live at Z101.9 FM, and as the focus, we're discussing the State of Nations address. We'll take a short breather, and when we return, we'll continue.
Z101.9 FM.
I'm out for me, Edmund. Where's me, Edmund? I'm out for me, Edmund. Where's me, Edmund? Me, Edmund, walk, I'm a cat, tell about one farmer. I'm out for me, Edmund. Where's me, Edmund? I'm out for me, Edmund. Where's me, Edmund? Me, walk, I'm a cat, tell about one farmer. I'm out for day, walk, I'm a cat, tell about one farmer. Mamma, man, do walk, I'm a cat, tell about one farmer. Sorry, I'm a farmer, walk, I'm a cat, tell about I'm farmer, Munia, man, do walk, I'm a cat, tell about one farmer.
You're tuned in to Z101.9 FM, your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
I'm out for me, Edmund. Where's me, Edmund? I'm out for me, Edmund.
101.9 FM.
Where's me, Edmund? Walk, I'm a cat, tell about one farmer. I'm out for day, walk, I'm a cat, tell about one farmer. Munia, man, do walk, I'm a cat, tell about one farmer. Sorry, I'm a farmer, walk, I'm a cat, tell about one farmer. man baby.
Waka me kapia ba.
One fan mama munia murumwa mendo.
Waka me kapia ba.
Me kapia ba man baby.
Waka me kapia ba.
One fan mama munia murumwa mendo.
Waka me kapia ba.
One fan mama munia murumwa mendo.
Waka me kapia ba.
101.9 FM.
Thank you very much for staying with us. We're still on the focus at Z101.9 FM, your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio. Please do well to send to us your comments, your suggestions to WhatsApp line 0544 321 019, 0544 321 019. Or you can leave your comments also on our IG, Facebook, and X accounts on ZFMGH, or on YouTube and TikTok, Z Multimedia. Or around the world, you can find us at www.zmultimedia.com. Prof, I'll come to you, and this time we're going to look at agriculture. And I know you are a renowned farmer. I mean, I know you pride yourself so much in it. Do you think that, or if let me ask, from the State of Nations address, do you think that the concerns of farmers were properly addressed?
Well, as I said, I mean, I don't think that I've digested the State of the Nation address to be pontificating on it, but I think generally the little I've looked at, which is not doesn't make me an expert in the area, shows that the government is emphasizing agriculture in the right direction, because agriculture has 3 dimensions for a developing country like us. First of all, it is the low-hanging fruit. Already, about 60% of our employment comes from the agricultural sector. They are already doing it, and therefore helping them to do so is much easier than, I mean, for example, if they get the impulse, which they don't need to have it for free, but at a good price, not Kalabule prices, the fertilizers, in the north, the tractors to mow and the rest. So that is it's a low-hanging fruit. Much of the agricultural products also, though I'm not talking about the cocoa and the tree crops, you have short gestation periods. Maize, rice, we are talking about 3 months. So that if you put a policy right one now and then work on it so that by April, May, when the rains come, you are ready, you can get a very quick return. The third reason is that, unfortunately, though we are a primary producing economy, we are dependent upon imports. I mean, how on earth? And the imports we are spending the money on are the things we can produce. I mean, just in my backyard, I am now producing so much fresh, avocado, I'm having pawpaw juice, I'm having jackfruit juice, I'm having so many guava juice, which I'm now bottling and freezing them to last me for about 6 months. This is so simple, and yet we spend millions, hundreds of millions to import rice, maize, flour, juice, those things. So we will then save foreign exchange from there. But the last point, which is mentioned in the State of the Nation address, is the linking it to agro-business. And it's so important. And also, when we talk about agro-business, we shouldn't be looking at so much the big establishments. But when I was younger, in the 70s, I was in Brazil. And I was so surprised at that stage how many things they were doing on a small scale. For example, their brake factories were not the big factory here, and then you produce and you transport brakes from here to Takoradi. No, it's a small factory, which when you are this crane deposit, you do it. When you finish it, you put it on a trailer and you go. The juices, you can make juices as I'm making for myself, but there I'm looking at a very micro
small
level.
Scale.
Yes, but if you have 1 acre of oranges, and you can have a small one that you can do fresh or just pasteurize it and sell it around. And these are the things we should be encouraging. So it links to both the first rank of industrialization and also creates a lot of jobs, because when someone, say in my village, produces about 1,000 bottles of orange juice, and has you have 4 or 5 people going to the schools, primary schools and that things, and selling them. Already, this is where I was talking about creating of jobs. If people 5 here, 2 there, 10 there, so the agriculture is so important, and I hope that it will not be again the job for the boys distributing it according to your party members and all those things, and focused. It is wonderful.
Yeah. But now let me come to you. Curiously, I noticed from the SONA that on imports, the government was quite silent, except to speak of imports of chicken, poultry, and I think some fish. But government rather focused on, let's say, the agriculture for economic transformation agenda, that they're going to modernize agriculture. Now, Prof is of the view that imports largely must be reduced so that it will boost productivity here. But it looks like government seems to see it as, maybe let's maintain some of the imports, but let's rather start from an approach of modernizing or creating that market here. Maybe before we look at the larger question of import, what do you think?
Well, again, contextualizing the president's State of the Nation's address, and let me first of all declare I have not been fortunate enough to be a farmer. My father, Prof, actually is, and so I'm yet to start. But why not? I mean, taking a cue from the little bottles of juices that have been made from home, and I have been enjoying it. I've been going up the hills, and I've been enjoying part of that. I think I better start, before it's late. But coming back to the main question, I think that to a very large extent, mechanization is one that is quite key as well. I never at all disagree with the reduction of importation of food and agric products. And I think that the president may have alluded to that, because that's when he even talked about the Akoko Nketenkete, project and all that. I mean, he's talked about a very deliberate and direct targeting of reducing poultry imports, which currently stands at about 90%. And he thinks that with a certain deliberate policy and support, to the local producers of poultry produce, we should be able to significantly, reduce that percentage. We didn't have a target, but I am sure that even if we reduced that by a half, just for the poultry products, and we were able to do the same for the other foods, like Prof talked about rice, and other things. And it's sad when you look at even, vegetables like tomato, onions, and all that being imported, even from the Sahelian region, to Ghana. It's quite a sad story. So I agree with you. We need to reduce imports, but I'm saying that the president specifically even mentioned that of poultry products and all that. And I think that once we have had that deliberate decision made for poultry, we probably should look at, extending it to the other, food products and other agricultural products like rice, basically rice. And I am told that the rice that is grown in Ghana is much, much more healthier and nutritious than the ones that we import. And so it really beats one's imagination when we talk about, or we have been talking all this while. In the last 3-4 decades, Ghana has been lamenting, the importation of rice and all that. And yet we're still doing it. And Prof gave one way out. And again, it's not as if it's new. We've been talking about this. If even that is deliberately targeted at our public schools, that should alone, significantly reduce that. But I'm saying that I did hear the president talk about, reducing the current
Yeah.
poultry imports, which is sitting at about 90%. And of course,
Yeah,
the
about
target were not
5%. We'll come specifically to
Yeah.
that.
To that.
Poliba, let me hear from Prof.
Let me also note that, that is why when our leaders neglect critical thinking that should take place in the National Development Planning Commission and coming out with solutions, these are interrelated. You don't separate poultry from that of soya bean and that of maize and rice. They are, so you can't talk about poultry as if, we are
Yeah.
going to do poultry.
Sure.
If you don't
Sure.
have sufficient soya and you don't have sufficient corn, you are just blowing hot air. They go together. And this is where I think that we can combine both the large scale and the small scale. The poultry, yes, we have big ones, but you can have it almost everywhere. But when it comes to producing the corn, I think that we have an advantage geographically. The Sahel zone, just as
the
much
savannah,
zone,
yeah,
not Sahel.
the northern
So,
sector of this
yes.
country, you
there
can grow
you can
corn.
support
Yeah.
large scale production because the terrain and everything allows it. And we are in a position, as a country, we can target about 4 crops, which would then almost cut across maize. We can also, interestingly, we can do wheat. We can do rice and the soya. If we're able to do this, to go beyond the human direct consumption, immediately you have your animal husbandry largely taken care of.
Yeah.
And this is the synergy that must take place. And then, I have a friend in Father Samuyo in Benin, Porto Novo to be exact.
Yeah.
And if you go there, he has this integrated system that basically allowed them to be self-sufficient. In fact, even when they slaughter the animals, the intestines and that things to be thrown away.
Yeah.
It's put in a place, then the maggots will come
That's
into
right.
there, and that's what he uses
Fertilizer.
in feeding the chicken.
Okay.
And so we must see the synergy. And this is where I expect the ministry. And I will not worry about trying to do everything. Let the plantain farmers, meanwhile, do the plantain, the cassava, the other things. You focus and then you break the back, make us food self-sufficient. And then, voila, we'll go.
Right,
Yeah.
Nana.
Yes.
About come back on the Alcon Kitinkiti
Yes.
project, more specifically on cutting out imports. So we're looking at about 95% of poultry needs to be imported.
Yeah.
Now, government by the Alcon Kitinkiti project seeking to move away from there.
Yeah.
Now let's look at it a bit
Can
more
you explain
critically.
a little bit more what he meant by the Akukon Kitikiti?
Well, I think that the Akukon-Kitinkiti thing has now become kind of a cliche.
For what?
I mean, during the campaign era, the president at the time, the flag bearer of the
Yes.
NDC had talked about, supporting, poultry farmers in this country with some of those
Baby chicken.
exactly baby chickens so that they could grow and all that. And I think that at the time, the opposition had, referred to it as, the Akukon-Kitinkiti. And
Okay. So
the president
hatcheries.
during the SONA
Yes.
said that, look, we're going to we're going to cut the imports of these poultry
Okay.
products and stuff like that, which is currently sitting at 90%. And he said, well, that's what he meant by the Akukon-Kitinkiti kind of thing. So that's just a cliche, sorry,
Yeah.
if you may. Yeah.
Yep. So now my question is that now there's a whole value chain for the importation.
Yes.
From the before it gets to the ultimate consumer, there are a lot of jobs created in there. Now this drastic change that we're going to grow chickens, we're going to feed.
Please, let me, I know you are the moderator, but let me stop you there. This idea that in Ghana, Guta is of the same stature as AGI is absolute nonsense. We must stop it. That those who import it, the value chain starts with your local production, and you have the chain becomes longer. When everybody starts doing everything there, they have their labor, they are producing the chicken, the corn, their soya, and everything else, and they produce the chicken and bring it here. How many people are involved in importing it and sending it to the other people? So this is one of the things we must confront, whereby there are interests. For example, I believe that the reason why our railway system was allowed to collapse is for the truck people, their lobby. And this is dangerous. We must come to a point to distinguish what is of national relevance and long-term sustainable one, so that.
But my question was going to come to the fact that now we have a challenge.
Yeah.
Is the solution just to take a drastic measure?
Yes.
Collapse everybody?
No, you are not collapsing. The people in other countries, they import substitution.
Yeah.
If you give it incentive, those who are importing even are the ones who go and manufacture because they know the systems. So this idea, there cannot be a Sherlock situation whereby cut but no blood. Yes, when you are restructuring the economy, there will be losers and gainers. But let me tell you, the losers must be the importers. And that is why I'm mentioning Guta and Co. They are not going to be the leading institutions for Ghana's development, but the producers locally.
So I get a sense that your ideology is let's take a draconian view. Let's end it.
Nigeria stopped importation of rice. 240 million people. Are they going to starve? They didn't starve. Immediately they did. Benin became the biggest importer of rice in Africa, so that they were passing it through Nigeria put the military on the border. Period. And I think that a time has come whereby we must do what we are capable of doing and don't allow a few people to hijack our national destiny. And therefore, I support the president, anything he will do. And I can't vouch that he will have the boldness because we have heard it and over it again.
But Prof, let me take you on this.
Yes.
I mean, since I know you're a trade expert. Now, you know that the whole institution of importation, even though it may be harmful to a country, is also backed by international trade laws.
No. The international trade laws doesn't allow you to discriminate between importing from China and America and that.
The MFN and national treatment.
It doesn't say, so long as you are treating every import the same, you are okay. It doesn't bar you from saying that I don't have the money to import it. I'm going to support my local people to produce. So, I mean, Nigeria is still about WTO, still a member of WTO.
Yes.
So why should we not? And there are other non-tariff barriers in exporting. When we are exporting to Europe, they say that, we have seen a little more mercury in your cocoa, and therefore we too can say that we have, because of A, B, and C, those ones that not me talk on the phone, to the radio. I will quote my senior former NDC chairman, Kwabena J. He said there are many ways to kill a cat. Once we decide, there's a way we will do it, and we will tell whoever wants to do it how to do it and not break any international law.
But before I come to Nana,
yes,
you'll see that most of these importers also have international agreements for these importations. Some of them even go on for a period. Now, how are they going to justify these breaches?
There's not going to be, let me tell you, anyone who says that he has an agreement to import chicken into Ghana for 10 years must go to Nsawam. Must go to Nsawam.
I am not too sure how such a draconian decision, but I mean,
Prof takes an absolute view. But
absolutely,
I want to know,
by and large, I would obviously not necessarily go for that very immediate, sharp, draconian decision.
Yeah.
But you see, I come back to your question and I put it back to you. Well,
may I intervene here?
Yes.
Since he's my son and you are even my grandchildren,
yes.
let me tell you, I've lived in Ghana enough. There is no way in which you are going to make progress without setting firm decisions.
Yeah.
All of you talk about Gimpa.
Yeah.
One day when I came, I lined up, there were 290 or so supporting staff to less than 40 teachers.
Yeah.
I lined them up and says, how can I distinguish between who is a better laborer and who is a worse laborer? A laborer will work depending upon supervision. I said left 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. When I finished, on my left were 140, on my right was 140. I said, all those on the left, go home. And they went home, and I paid them for 1 year sitting at home. And during that year, we doubled our turnover, which shows that they were, when they were there, they were, listen, we are not going to develop by this NDC, you are with us, MPP, you are with other things. No. We must have a national agenda. Yeah. But the end result is not so much taking people out of employment. Believe me, those who are importing the chicken have a network of distributing locally produced chicken in Ghana. Yeah. So they are traders, they bought it, and now if they are other ones to buy it, they buy it. Their strength lies in their capacity to distribute. And those chicken being made by the Aku farms. That's why we are just directing you to the source, which is different.
Yeah. So please, again, coming back. No, why not? When the old man decides to stop you, why not? You better start applying your brakes before it gets out of hand. But even before I answer you, I mean, Prof was talking about Nigeria having taken that draconian decision and still in the WTO. You know, why not? I mean, you know, the Secretary General of the WTO, so we don't know what they're doing behind the scenes. But it doesn't stop us to have a certain deliberate policy nationally. When I talk about not necessarily supporting immediate, deliberate, draconian decision, it still doesn't give way. And that was why I was going to get back to you, throwing the question back to you, that what is the interest that we seek to serve in this country? Is it the individual importer? Is it that small group of importers? Or we are looking at the Republic of Ghana's interest, the interest of the state for which we all owe a certain allegiance, which benefit at the end of the day, indirectly or directly, reflects back to us. I think that we need to come to the realization that at this stage, haven't done how many years, 67, 68. I mean, in the next few days, we'll be celebrating our anniversary, and that's why I would like to celebrate and salute all the past heroes. Of course, the current heroes as well. Yeah. We add the unsung ones and all that. But I'm saying, coming back to the point that, yes, to some extent, when you take some of these very draconian decisions, they also have a certain, backlash onto the state, and for that matter, the kind of international treaties and agreements that we have with certain people. But the bottom line question is, in whose and in what interest do we serve? Is it the individual importers? Is it the small group of importers? Or that interest of the sovereignty of the Republic of Ghana? I think that once we make that decision, and obviously I'll be going for that, for the Republic or Ghana's, interest. Once we make that decision, we may now deliberately have to find ways, sooner than later though, of gradually getting to the point where we stop this importation, which hurts us so badly. Let me not stop there by quickly adding that it will not have to be limited only to poultry imports or whatever it is. Yeah. I'm saying that it is a sorry state. It's a sad state to come to the realization that the Republic of Ghana imports tomatoes from our Sahelian brothers. There's nothing wrong with doing trade with our West African brothers and probably other African states. After all, we're talking about the African Continental Free Trade Area and all that, and comparatively would want to look at what the advantages are here and there. But I'm saying that at the end of the day, as a sovereignty, as a national state, as a republican state, we want to look at the ultimate interest, which is about we doing our own things right in here. And I don't believe that if we extended that decision to many of these food and agri products, and that is also one of the reasons why I would go back to the strategic policy direction of the government, because you would realize that today the Ministry of Trade and Industry is now referred to as the Ministry of Trade, Agri Business or so, and industry. So again, a certain deliberateness is being brought to bear. So we are looking at how, and that will obviously feed into the trade question that you talked about, that if agriculture is the mainstay of this country, where do we stand? How does it impact us negatively or positively, bringing imports when we can deliberately do that, which would increase our own national productivity and create the jobs and the employments that we require? Let us not only limit it to poultry, but we can look at many other food and agri products, that when we are able to do that, not necessarily getting up today and saying from tomorrow we have banned that, and I know that I should be getting ready for a few lashes when we get out of here. Why not? That's the old man's view, and this is my view. I think that sooner than later we should be getting to the point where we are doing our own internal homegrown productions, and agriculture, which is the mainstay of this country, is what will trumpet us to where we seek to go.
Right, thank you. I mean, I'd love for us to go on the issue of agriculture, because it's the huge backbone of our economy. But for sake of time, I want us to quickly look at education.
Yes, but sorry, lawyer. Let me quickly add, very quickly. I'm sorry I left this out. That it's not only going to be reduced to the cancellation of imports and stuff like that. We have so many arable lands in this country. Prof talked about the northern sector of this country, the southern sector equally very productive. You know, the Accra Plains, for example, is right there. We need deliberately to start looking at how we can put the productive land use that we have, you know, to the various sectors, especially agriculture. Irrigation. Ghana is blessed so much with freshwater bodies. There are other countries, of course, and that's an issue that we may have to look at another point in time, but irrigation is there. When you come down here, fortunately, I mean, the Volta basin, you know, is one that is real good for us to target. Unfortunately, we had this incident, I think, in the Republic of Togo, I think about a week or two ago, but that, I believe, is being managed right now. But irrigation is one of the things that we can very quickly look at. We can also look at the issue of processing, which Prof has talked about already. These basic fruits and foods that we have, we can look at them, we can process them. And thankfully, the University of Ghana Business School, and I think a few other business schools, you know, in Ghana, some of the public institutions are looking at how they can process some of these foods that we have, vegetables and all that. I think we can do that. Storage used to be a big thing in the past. We have so many of these silos sitting all around the place. In Tema, you go there, some of these silos are still sitting there. We aren't doing anything with them. We can put them, once we do the strategic kind of production plan that Prof talked about, the integrative, you know, processing, I think is something that we can do. Of course, marketing is very important. When we have had the produce, how do we sell them? How do we package them? How do we get all these things going? I think once we do all these things quite strategically, it will lead us, you know, out of the kind of visions that we set for ourselves, and Ghana will obviously be the better for it.
Right, as I said, I mean, the agriculture is a loaded area that we probably may even want to have a bigger conversation on that. But moving to education, the president indicated that he inherited a system which is outdated. And as part of his policy, he's going to realign it to meet the needs of the 21st century and the fourth industrial revolution. Prof, I know you're also an educationist. What do you think? from the basic to the tertiary
basically,
level.
those bra are just political talk. They inherited. What did he inherit? He was a president only 8 years ago, and and Ghana has been an independent country. So
it's probably suggesting that
come 6th of March, it has been 68 years.
Yeah.
So therefore, 68, 60 before you handed over. So I think that politicians, that's why we don't go forward. We have a system which we have been improving not adequately. So the inherited should be cancelled. But
but you see, let me just come in shortly. You'd see that the educational system has taken different turns.
Yeah.
For instance, during the Kufuor era, it had a turn. Professor Mills, if you take secondary education, President Kufuor took us to the 4-year educational system.
Yeah.
President Mills brought us to the 3-year. Now
Yes.
Nana Addo took us to the double track and all that. So probably don't you think that that's the reason why His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is saying that the system is currently inherited? Probably this double track and go to free education is outdated?
Well, listen, I hate the talk of inherited, but now let us go to the substance.
Yeah.
There's no doubt at all that our education system has not evolved to match where we should be today.
Yeah.
First of all, and I think many Ghanaians don't realize the worst link in our education system is in the primary level, whereby 80% of our children who go to the public primary school,
Yeah.
the World Bank study in 2016, World Development Report, calls it schooling without learning. In other words, what they do there, all the papa about teacher education and everything else, the description is that schooling without learning. My organization, not I as an individual, opened a primary school in the capital of Asokwa district, Adansi Asokwa district. To our surprise, we, from primary KG to primary 6, when we opened, within 4 days, we had to close it, admissions, because people rushed there from the public schools. I had put a limit that they cannot take more than 30 per class, so that the 8 would be 240. Despite all the insistence, when I went, they had gotten 252. People running away. And the sad part of it is that people have been in the schools, public schools, for 5 years, cannot read a typical primary 1 lesson.
Yeah.
And the worst part of it is that the so-called trained teachers in the public primary school take their children to private schools in the same localities. We call them poor private schools, because if you go and see their buildings, their teachers are, excuse me to say, secondary school failures, and yet they get better results than the government school, which will, on the average, will have 6 to 12 trained teachers. And these primary school teachers in the private sector, sad to say, and I don't approve of it, are paid about 500 Ghana cedis and below. And the government pays 3,000 average. And yet, so the biggest challenge is making sure, in fact, people think that the biggest challenge is, schools on the trees, children studying with their belly, and I've seen it, so I don't doubt it. But that's not the problem. The problem is that in the primary school, our teachers have refused to teach. They are paid and they don't do their job because of lack of supervision. The GES has centralized management and discipline in Accra. And as I use the example, because that was a reality, whereby a Roman Catholic father in the Kasok, in Obuasi, tells a teacher who is misbehaving to behave. He says, Father, I'm not going to change. You can do nothing. You can write to the GES and nothing will happen to me. That is a Roman Catholic father happening to. So much of the thing we must start, the focus on SHS, which I will come to, has detracted us from this fundamental, I call it, destroyer of the lives of the average Ghanaian people by the very people we have entrusted them to. And NAT and all those NAGRAT and other things must sit up and for goodness sake and for conscience sake start acting, because this nation's future is mortgaged. You cannot correct the damage they are doing at the primary level, at the senior and the tertiary. Last on before I leave the primary school, because I'm so passionate about it. The reason why we've gone to primary in my village, near my village, is that we started a secondary school there, and we insisted that the people should come from the 11 villages around.
Yeah.
Do you know that we had to introduce what we call access class? And when they come, spend 1 more year training them. We go through, believe it, from class 1 to JHS in the 1 year before they can be prepared to go to secondary school and do the 3 years. So that, I'll rest here since we are 2, then next time I'll come to the senior secondary school. But I can never be on a platform and not bring out what is happening. And fortunately, we can correct this within the shortest possible time. And it's only as simply giving the head teachers the mandate of discipline and even firing and holding the head teachers accountable for the results. And of course, remunerating them. The head teachers now are paid about only 80 cedis above the ordinary teacher. So who cares? A head teacher must be paid at least 50% more.
Yeah.
And then you say that if you don't make sure that the others do their job, the difference between the private sector and the public sector at that level has to do with management, supervision, and accountability. And
So
those
Prof,
doesn't require more money.
This issue of public schools, let's roll it back to, let's say, about 50 years ago. Most of the public schools, even in the villages, had the best of teachers, the trained teachers. So
And
are you saying that?
best of results?
Of results, yes.
Because of, listen, I was trained as Set A teacher, primary school teacher.
Okay.
I finished in the 60s, before some of you, maybe your mothers were taught by me. But on the more serious note,
Yeah.
at that time, when I was a teacher, by Sunday latest, 6 p.m., every subject I am supposed to teach, I should have prepared a note on it for the whole week and have to go and give it to your head teacher. And then when you are even in addition, when you are teaching, anytime an education officer may show up. And they didn't have cars, so now they have cars.
Yeah.
They call themselves directors and they get all their allowances. And when he comes, do you know what he does? He doesn't, he says, the children greet him. Good morning, sir. I say, good morning. He takes your notebook and goes to sit at the back. And woe betide you when you said that at 8:45 you will be teaching multiplication. And when he comes, you are sitting under a tree watching. But even when you are in the class and you are not doing that, you are in trouble. So it was the system, the supervision, the accountability that made the difference. And again, at that time, when most of the teachers were people teachers. There were Set B teachers and a few trained teachers there. But the primary school were largely, when I was in class, I remember class 4, class 5, class 6, we were taught by one people teacher for all these 3 years, but we made it. So the supervision, the issue does not have to do with the training colleges. It has to do with accountability. And that is why the poor private schools are making it, and the public schools being with the amount of money government is spending, and they have the audacity of it to say that their salaries are low.
But how about the issue of infrastructure, the issue of...
It's
I've seen that
secondary.
as part of government's policy.
Let me tell you, I agree that in this day and age, but let me tell you that give me a child, give me 10 children,
Yeah.
for 3 months, about the age of 6, let them sit on the floor. I will teach them to read. I'm not saying that the infrastructure is not important. At certain level, the single most important determinant of education is the teacher and getting the right methodology and book to do so. The other things, of course, I mean, the other day just last week, I was coming from New DBRC through the forest to down in the school, and I saw children this day and age lying on the floor and writing. Again, I said that those parents in the village, do they, their children lie on the floor to eat? Irresponsibility. Can they make stools for their children? You know, everybody, we have made people think as a bang. How? It is just, the village is called what? Prahu. It's an achievement.
They probably have, you know, public centers for funeral on a Saturday. You know, they have a very well built public center, roofed and everything. And then Monday to Friday, their children go to school lying on the floor.
Lying on the floor. Yeah. And each one of them requires just a stool, which in the village you can make it yourself or so cheaply to buy. Yeah. It's also, again, the psyche and the responsibility and the attitude whereby our politicians have told them, if the government hasn't brought a chair, the child should lie down there. So those ones, and again, if you have a good head teacher in a village, she's supposed to be the leader in catalyzing all these things. Yeah. And a lot of things. I believe that we must address collectively the primary. Let me tell you, the secondary is the one that catches, because at the secondary school is the other mind Latins are speaking and Latins, and nobody is speaking for the child in the Krochua. Yeah.
But Prof, I'll come to Banana. Let me just take your view on education.
I'll come back to the senior secondary
we'll come to secondary school and look at...
my passion is for primary.
Right.
And for me, again, I mean, when you're with Prof on a program like this, you have to be very, very careful. I mean, education, he is one of the foremost, educationists that you would have in this country, and so you would have to be very careful what you say. But here is how I encapsulate the situation when it comes to education. And if I were to have the powers to rephrase and rewrite the foremost novelist, the East African novelist, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who wrote that book, Weep Not Child, I would rewrite it and say, cry, mother Ghana, cry. And why do I say this? I mean, I'll pick just a couple of things from what Prof has already talked about. And I think that I entirely associate myself with all the comments that have been made, you know. But of course, yes, the SHS, the free SHS thing, which I will always say, and I thank God that at the end of the day, the whole of the Republic of Ghana has come to the agreement that, yes, a free senior high school system, not just the senior high school system, you know, is one of a good national policy. Definitely the implementation, which we all very much agree has suffered some significant challenges, and for that matter, call for a very dispassionate review, is something that this country should stand for. And I fully subscribe, you know, to that kind of situation which would move this country forward. But what am I picking? Prof just talked about two things. He talked about the conscience. The conscience. He said, at least, if for nothing at all, the conscience of the various teacher associations, the leadership of government, because why not? They have the responsibility to run this country. And for that matter, we would want to see a demonstration, a clear demonstration of a certain selfish, nationalistic, you know, vision towards enhancing, you know, nurturing and building that good foundational educational system for this country. But the teachers that we have, the various teacher groups, the good, the nuts, the Nagrats, and the rest of them also have a certain critical responsibility here. I think that we should for 1 second pause, because this whole country will run on everything but education. It is education that will ensure the security and defense of the state. It is education that will support the agriculture of this nation. It is education that will support trade and commerce. It is education that will underwrite the tourism of this country. It is education that will put this country up the pedestal where it deserves to be, that shining star of Africa and of the whole of the globe. Where have we put it? I think that we need to come back and look at the issue of education much more critically. And I agree with you when you talk about infrastructure. It does not make me necessarily disagreeing with a good professor when he says that yes, infrastructure is important, but there are things that we can do. I fully agree with him as well, because a good infrastructure, like you are leader too, will support, will facilitate education and all that. What are we as a people doing? What is the leadership doing? What is the ministry doing? What are the various educational sectors, the CSOs, what are they doing? It is a far cry when you look at some of the agendas that some of these civil society organizations will be running just because of some parochial, external interest and all that. I think, once again, that we have gotten to the point where, as a people, as a nation, we need to sit down and relook what we really want to achieve for ourselves. Education, for me, is primus inter pares. Yeah. We need to focus on education, and it will take the leadership of the government. Yeah. It will take the responsibility of the people who have been, tasked, to run the ministry and the service and the other agencies. Today, we don't only have the Ghana Education Service, we have other services, we have other authorities and agencies which are supporting in the running of the education of this country. Of course, the tertiary system is also there, but also the people, the parents, the teachers, and even we, the students ourselves. And I say we because I still find myself learning, at one point in time or the other. I think that we really, and in no doubt, I know that you want to quickly run on this, but I know that the decision to set up this forum of education, which has actually been done, and we are all awaiting the reports that it will be submitted. I am hoping, much against hope though, but I am hoping that at the end of the day, the report that would come out of this National Education Forum, as important as it is of an economic forum, I hope that what will come out of it will be holistic, it will cut across all sectors, and the leadership, the presidency, the ministerial level, the various sectors would have a dispassionate discussion that would lead to an attempt to resolving our educational crisis once and for all.
Yeah. But, Prof, so His Excellency mentioned that he supports the free SHS. He makes that quite unequivocal and indicates that he's going to reform it. Now, from you, yes, I know you also are in the educational sector at the secondary level, or let me say senior high level.
In fact, I am from KG to university.
To university. Okay, now let's look at the effect of free SHS on public senior high schools. Because today I've maintained that a lot of private schools have gotten a lot of business because of, should I say, a supposed failure of the public senior high school. Now, a lot of, hitherto, let's say about 15 years ago, many parents were happy taking their children to Presec or Achimoto School or Wesley Girls, but some parents now are quite pessimistic about the numbers that the schools are taking, so they'd rather take them to a private school where they can control.
Let me do a correction here.
Yeah.
Not because I'm in the private sector.
Yeah.
And also.
Yeah.
Basically, it's not true. The amount of children going to private schools in Ghana today, in the secondary school, are far less than it was before the introduction of the free SHS. what has happened actually.
No, Prof, about let's say 15 years ago, many of the private schools were not even known.
No. Let me explain to you.
Okay.
There's a difference between perception and reality.
Okay.
There were almost, if you went to every big town in Ghana, there was a private secondary school.
Yeah.
If you went to Swedru, there were senior high, there were about 3. The free SHS has collapsed all of them because the people think that this is free. You are talking about what we call the elite private schools,
right,
which are very few, and their numbers are also very limited. You go to SOS, we are talking about 300 people. I think that the 2 biggest private secondary schools in Ghana are ICS, International Community School, and Ghana Christian International High School. These are the 2 biggest private schools.
Do you mean in terms of the numbers of students? Okay.
Yes. And we are talking about Ghana Christian is 1,200 at SOTA and 842. So the rest are average of 400. So what I'm saying is that the number at the secondary school level who are now in private schools actually has shrunk by about 60% because most of the medium, not the elite, have all collapsed because of the free SHS. So, but let us move on. This was just a correction. I think that the free SHS is the best thing that has happened to Ghana education system since Nkrumah's days. That is indisputable. It has improved access. Now it's almost more than doubled the many people who, but for me, it's unfortunate that the term which was used, which was popular politically as the free SHS, it should have been, I was consulted and we are doing it now, I was actually, no child should be left behind. That immediately changes it. In other words, it's what you are aiming at is that no child should be denied secondary school because it's been proven everywhere that if you don't go to school up to the age of 18, minimum of 10 to 12 years, you are economically, personally handicapped for the rest of your life. So nobody. If you change it that way, then this idea of almost the NPP got locked into it. No, it's free. Even if you want to contribute, you don't. Who allow you to contribute wouldn't have happened because you allow people to contribute and then making sure that the state doesn't leave anybody behind. Let me give you an example of what that means. If you go to PRESEC, those about at least 50% of the people who take their children to PRESEC also have to pay afternoon classes of about 400 Ghana cedis per subject per term. They are paying average of 10,000 to 20,000 if you add the food they supply for their children to go to free SHS in PRESEC. And I'm not picking on PRESEC, I mean, because I have a friend whose daughter went to Accra Girls, so it's the same. So I'm just, you can only use this as an illustration. I want to concretize it. If those 10,000 had gone, there was a system that allowed them to contribute into a national, the PRESEC system. And then it's not a matter of the teachers having it privately and then they go and shout to the government, our salaries are low. And they were incentivized with it. Also improved the facilities, and some were used in you have seen a gargantuan improvement. As a result of this system, even, PRESEC never tells about how many of their children passed. They only talk about 8 A's. That is a fallacy. What they do is this, because of the national quiz and that things, when they come, they look for about 10 or 20 students who are naturally brilliant, and they focus on them. The rest. We are still having that. Even last year, where the government was tooting, and rightly so, that 65% of people pass. What does it mean? 35 failed. That means 1 out of 2 people who go to secondary school don't make it. And most of them, the reason why they don't make it, that the free SHS system has collapsed the quality of education in terms of what takes place in the classroom. So that if you cannot afford, actually the privatization of the free SHS, you come from Huromwasi, and people have passed. I want to admit them to come to Huromwasi SHS, our SHS, for only 700 Ghana cedis a term. They say they are going to free HSS in Fansipim. They end up, their parents paying about 5,000 a term, and then they fail and come back. Why? Because they couldn't support the free the afternoon classes. And they come and beg me for admission. In fact, it's our policy. We don't accept them to come in there. Because so there are a lot of challenges, and that is where I support His Excellency the President, that this thing must be reviewed. We shouldn't let go the fact that no Ghanaian child will happen like I did. I didn't go to secondary school because my parents couldn't afford. And thank God I was saved by going to Sefirioso Training College after serving, and I maneuvered to get through. But so I support it, but there are a lot of challenges, and that will be confronting these afternoon classes issues and everything else. It cannot be allowed whereby the teachers in public school don't teach and cover their syllabi in class, and they deliberate, and if you don't go to their classes after school, you are sure to fail. So there are so many things we must look at, and let people also willing to contribute do so, but the government must pick up those who cannot afford, because nobody should be left behind. And once we have that one, Kosha, we will find that our free secondary school, as we call it, which I want to rename it, that let no one be left behind, would work. In the long run, and that's my final submission, is this: no country in the world, and the answer, the underlying, no country in the world trains his teenagers in boarding schools. The boarding school is an inherited colonial system where they needed a few who will serve as clerks and other things. But if you make it national, now we are talking about our millions, we must go to quality community schools. And if there's time, I will explain what, because I put my mouth or my money where my mouth is. We have a boarding school in Accra, Dodowa, and we have a community school in Huromwasi, which is day school, and consistently in the Wasi, our community school has performed better. Why? Because we have made sure the teachers live there and the students come, they have access to Wi-Fi and everything, and for 6 years continuous, a community secondary school has had 100% passes. Only 5 individuals in 6 years having got 8 passes in West Africa in the first sitting. So we must do so. My children studied overseas. They never went to boarding schools, but the boarding school, if you go to America and everywhere else, is for those, we call, in fact, in Britain, when they talk about public school, it means the private boarding schools. Yeah. And this is where a few select people may want to let them pay for full ones. If you want your child to go to Ghana Christian or want to go to SOS or GIS or Lincoln, that's your problem. But there must be a quality community school for every child, because the government will never be able to sustain a boarding school system as our populations grow.
Right, Prof, I think that the government probably learned a thing from your community schools by introducing the Teacher Dabre initiative. I think the aim is to construct accommodation units for the teachers in the area, so that it attracts more teachers into the rural areas. I
loved when the president said that one, because he started in youth schools in the bush without teacher accommodation. So at least he has come a long way now.
Right. But then I mean, coming to about an end to the conversation. Do you think these initiatives by government, these teacher dabre, there's a scholarship scheme for Islamic students. There are introduction of PTAs back into the schools to help in that region.
I hope you have that one also for the Christian school students. Because this is a national issue.
Yeah.
If it talks about Muslim issue, they always get themselves in trouble.
Yeah.
Why should we elect 70% of Ghanaians elect you and say that Muslim schools? No. Your policies must be national.
Isn't it probably a need there? Because it looks like almost every government would have kind of neglected that aspect because they are looking at the Christian side. Because I know it's quite specific. Maybe we can go into it later.
Any specific favor of a...
No, not a specific favor, but that's where the attention, maybe unconsciously, that's where it looks like the attention. We can look at it indeed because it's quite specific.
I mean,
some statistics
Yes,
to support this will be relevant to put it within the right perspective. I know that there's not much time here.
Yes.
Again,
so I'm just asking that. So these policies,
yes,
do you think they are enough to solve our educational problem?
You know what? This is how I will end it, and I believe that we need to come back again and talk about some of these issues, because they're so critical for the survival of this nation. But I just pose one question again. I posed it earlier, and when it has come to education, I'm posing it again. In whose interest do we serve? Is it a single individual? Is it a parochial sectoral group? Or that of the national interest? There are too many experts. We have one sitting with us in the studio here, many others out there. Indeed, in this case, when it comes to the survival of the nation, you are not even looking just as experts. You're looking at everybody being nationalistic, patriotic, looking at the good of Mother Ghana in whatever policies that are being introduced. I am saying that what is the interest we seek to serve? When we come back at the next opportunity, we'll get the opportunity to dissect them very well. At the end of the day, Ghana, like Prof said, will be 68 come next Thursday. Yeah. Where are we? Where do we want to go? It is about Ghana, not about any parochial, sectorial, sectarian interest, not about any individuals, but about that of the Republic of Ghana.
Sometimes I hear that the president apologized that when
Prof, I'll take these as your final words.
Yes, when they met at Ho, they had not invited the Christian Council.
Yeah.
They did not invite the Catholic Secretariat, they are responsible for the best schools in this country, and you are going to consultation, you didn't invite them. But quite interestingly, you know how I heard about it? I was coming from our school in Dodo, and I stopped at Mercom in Frafraha, and then someone said, "Oh, Prof, we missed you." I said, "You missed me where?" He said, "I'm coming from Ho, from a British Council. We went there, and I said, "Oh, I just heard about you are now telling me about the National Forum." Then later on, when I heard that the Catholics and the Christian Council were not invited, I said, "Oh, then that's why I never talked." I believe that, as Nana has said, it is in the interest of the government in this matter. For once, let's get it right by consulting all relevant people. The advantage when you are a policy maker is this: when you consult the person, you don't need to implement his ideas, but at least you have checked your ideas against other people. And that is where I plead that this time we should get it right. And let's come up with a system which means that no Ghanaian child
will be left behind.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you to my esteemed guest, Nana Osafo Kantanka, a development communication specialist, and Professor Dai, a renowned economist, educationist, leadership, respect, and literally everything we need for
my friend.
the growth of our country. So we've been discussing the State of Nations address. We've looked at the employment sector, looked at the educational sector and the agricultural sector. Looked at the fact that, especially for the educational sector, the free SHS, it's a very good initiative, but we have to take a second look at it. We have looked at the fact that imports even though creates a lot of business, especially as Prof takes a look at it, he insists that we should take a very drastic approach to bringing an end to it and creating more businesses in our country. Thank you very much for staying with us. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Focus at Z101.9 FM. We're grateful for your time. Please do not forget to follow us on our social media platforms. On IG, follow us on ZFMGH, on Facebook, ZFMGH, and on X, also ZFMGH, and on TikTok and YouTube, Z Multimedia. And if you want to join us on the internet also, you can do so on www.zmultimedia.com. Also, you can send us your comments, your suggestions, your contributions. Let's keep the conversation live and ongoing on 0544321019. 0544321019. Thank you very much. My name is Kweku Atakra Jumo, and until we come your way next week, it's bye for now.